Start. As you know, at Kos and Chaos, we believe that the most important conversations are the ones that are often the hardest. Our work is grounded in curiosity, intellectual honesty, and a deep interest in lived experiences of people, where they live and where they are. Rather than reducing complex realities to fixed positions, as often happens, especially here, we facilitate space where history, identity, fear, power, and possibilities can be explored side by side. And tonight we're honored to have with us Beni Sabti, all the way from Tel Aviv, but originally from Iran. Beni Sabti is an Iran expert in Israel, and I know him both from the news. I saw you almost every day, 24/7, in the 12-day war in June. I almost feel I know him. But I also see him you have a great satirical character at one of the most, really brilliant 20-year-old satirical program. So I like both of them. They're doing a good job. Beni works at the Institute for National Security at the Tel Aviv University. And we have with us, all the way from Washington, D.C., digitally, Mr. Alex Vatanka. Ooh, hello.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. He's a senior fellow at the Middle Eastern Institute, and he's a leading expert on Iranian foreign and security policy. And I also know you have some Danish connection.
Ja, jeg kan godt snakke dansk, hvis det du har lyst til det, men det er jo ikke farligt, når man snakker dansk med nordmand, så det er med nummerne, de går galt altid.
Beni, you take this in Danish? Great. So we can all feel at home, okay? We can all feel at home. And we're so lucky to have with us. We had some changes in the plans because our original guest, Roya, she had something that she couldn't make it. So that changed a bit our plans. And Alexander Ibsen is going to be our moderator tonight. He's on his way on the helicopter from somewhere in town. And he's going to be here very soon. But at the meantime, welcome to you guys. Beni will start with telling a bit about Iran.
Wow, thank you for having me here. And I'm doing it alone. My wife never allows me to go alone. My mother didn't allow me to go alone, so I don't know what I do now. Okay, so I go to my satirical part. Hi, Alex. Very nice to see you here. Hi. I'm sure that Alex has his also background and past with Iran and everything, but I want to go there and tell you some things to have the proportions about Iran and what it was and what happened after the revolution. First of all, this is something that happened to me now, 2 hours ago. You can solve all the Middle East problems, just bring all the nations here in these days of January, February, put them in the street for half an hour, there will be peace. If they have your cold, here really, the Iranians hate cold, the regime will be gone, really, they won't stand that. I went in that beautiful street, Johann Karl, maybe, yes? 50 meters from Zara to H&M because of the Wi-Fi. In Zara, I had my legs. In H&M, my legs were not with me anymore, really. My eyes, my ears, you can make peace. You tried. In 93, you made the Oslo agreement. It was in September. Not good. Not good. Make it in January. Make it in February. Everyone will accept that. I'm sure. So I really mean it, because we have to be forced by something. In Middle East, you have to have some magical or mystical force. We have God, of course, but everyone has his God. The Muslims, the Christians, the Jews. So it's a huge problem, really. Someone else has to come and teach us what to do. And what I wanted to say about my experience, and I will talk about it also later, but I had a small talk with someone here, and just it came back to me how we could know what can happen with Iran and Iran regime very much earlier, and not getting to this point of very bad things that they are going on inside Iran and outside Iran, the terror inside, outside also, and the missiles and everything. When I was 13 years old, I had, in Iran, I grew up there until I was 15 years old, and we ran away. It's a huge story. And I had a private tutor for English when I was 13 years old. And she was a Filipinian. And we talked about regular things in the days, but I was very political, kind of analyzing, even in that days, I analyzed all the time what is happening and what's going on with us. Maybe it's a Jewish thing and Iranian thing together, I don't know. So I don't remember what he asked me, what she asked me, but my answer, and I didn't know that we are going to run away from Iran. It was 1.5 years before that, before other bad things happened and that brought us to run away from Iran. And my answer to the teacher was, our future is going to be dark in Iran. It was a 13-year-old boy saying it to a teacher in the house. So I was not executed, as you see. I don't know why I said that. But sometimes in Persian, you say the kids say the truth. I believe that in other languages there is also this phrase, that the kids know. Like that story when the kid sees the king that he's naked. I don't know what it's called in Norwegian. So, and this happened because all the signs were there. The regime was evil from the day one. They executed so many people inside Iran, and I don't go to the Israeli place and Jewish place, and yes, we have something with them. We have a huge problem with them, but the internal problem with the Iranian regime is much bigger, and it begins there. Someone wrote in an Iranian newspaper in 2004, there are 4 basic problems that Iran regime has to solve if they want peace with the world. The nuclear issue, the missile program or issue, the terror, recognizing Israel, and all of them, he concluded, all of them are about human rights. Because if you go and develop nuclear program and bomb, you don't recognize the human rights. You want to destroy the other nations, other people. Missile program, the same. Terror, of course. Recognizing Israel is a sign that if you honor human rights or not. And all of these things, and he is an Iranian writer. I think he is still in jail because of that article. So when you go to the past, you have the answers. The regime doesn't want to know about these answers. But I hope that we can discuss some of them here. Sorry for the long, but he is to be accused.
I am. Absolutely.
The Iranians have always some excuse. He is to be guilty. No, I'm not. I didn't do it. So.
Thank you, Beni. I'll also teach you a Norwegian phrase, tidsoptimist, time optimist. That is what we were all victim, or at least me, I was victim of that, a double engagement. But then, happily, you were able to to carry the scene, of course, and that's no surprise. I wondered if we, at this point, before we move on to discuss the Middle East, Iran, as you were already fully engaged with, we should introduce our other guest, who is on the screen.
Yeah.
Mr. Alex Vatanka, senior fellow. Alex, do you mind giving us a broad and quick overview of where you come from in these questions?
Sure. Great. Listen, thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be with you. I wish I was there in this cold Norwegian winter, but I've been to Norway plenty of times. I've been married to a Norwegian woman for the last 30 years, so I sympathize, and yet I do love the Christmas time in Norway. But anyway, good to be with you, Alexander. Beni, I'll be very quick in terms of my background. I was born in Iran, as with Beni. I think Beni's also born in Tehran, and I left Iran about 40 years ago, exactly 40 years ago, and I ended up in Jylland, or Jutland, as they say, in Denmark, and then from there, England, and then 20 years here in Washington, D.C. I work at the Middle East Institute. We are the oldest think tank in America covering the Middle East, and we deal with all sorts of people, scholars, policymakers, diplomats, foreign embassies. And as you all know, busy these days trying to figure out what's going on in the Middle East, in U.S.-Iran tensions. So as my sort of role here at the Institute, what I like to think of myself as is someone who can put on different hats. I can put on the Iranian hat. When you push me, I try and think like the Ayatollah. Where's he coming from? What shapes him? I try and think like Trump. Where is he coming from? What sort of political realities in Washington shape Trump's next decision on Iran? And sometimes I like to think of myself as an Arab in the Middle East. What do I think of Iran if I'm sitting in Riyadh or Abu Dhabi, or if I'm sitting in Oslo, Berlin, London? So I think it's really important for us analysts to be able to put ourselves in different shoes as we try to tell the story of what we think is happening. Obviously, so many moving parts to the Iran-US saga that is 50 years old. Beni just pointed out some of the hard issues that need to be overcome. The nuke issue, the missiles, Iran's regional policies, its position of the state of Israel. So I'm sure we've got lots to talk about, but let me stop there before I talk too long.
Let me start with one broad question to both of you that you can address in turn. And this comes from the fact that we all watch Iran at the moment, right? We have seen demonstrations, and that happens every so often. Every few years, we see demonstrations. For an outside observer, it's hard to say, are they the same demonstration? Is the country united behind these demonstrations? What is really going on? And why does this theocratic regime, why is it able to hold on to power for so long? After wave of the protests, and it doesn't really seem to have that many friends in the world. So what is really going on? What are we not understanding about Iran? So I could start with you, maybe, Beni.
Yeah. So I think these protests were the biggest and the most violent protests from the both sides. We saw for the first time that the protesters attack the depression forces of the regime. This almost never happened before. This is a very unique thing. They are much more brave and furious with the regime. The situation in Iran is much worse since the other protests, since the women protests, or before that, 2009, 2017, or 2009 and 99, of course. You can see through the price of the dollar against the Iranian currency, rial. It jumped so fast in these recent years and recent months, and they cannot stop that. The corruption is much more and deeper in Iran, and the money that goes to all that evil projects. So these are more or less the reasons that...
What are the evil projects?
Of course, as I said before, the nuclear program, that it's not for the good of the people. They have a nuclear plant in Bushehr. It's the older one, since maybe 50 years. They are building it. Iran can have a Nobel Prize about building the slowest builder. I think there has to be a prize about that. How can you make something that it goes for 1 year to 50 years? It's in Iranian art. As you understand, the time is not a valuable thing in Iran, really. Not in terror, not in building things, nothing. So the nuclear program, the missile program, the terror machine, it's the basic thing. Iran regime without terror is not the Iranian regime. Without having these proxies, and proxies is not a good word, terror organizations. We have to say that in that words. And of course not respecting human lives inside Iran or outside Iran. These are all the things that matter for Iran regime, and they don't care about destroying the infrastructures, taking the Iranian money, the oil, for these purposes. This is the reason that we came to a place that the Iranians have no water, have no air, have no food, basic food. So these are the reasons for the protest, and they came out to fight for their lives. And for some of them, dying from the bullets was better than dying from hunger. So this is the thing that goes on. And how the regime survives? The regime, as one Iranian said, the regime has the weapons, the money, and the pen. The pen is the propaganda, the media. As long as they can lie to the people, to the world, have negotiations when you have to attack them, they killed their people, but they still manage somehow to bring US to talk to them. This is the biggest problem. If you shut down their televisions, their radios, their papers, this is a very big change.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Vatanka, how do you see it? So what are we not getting about Iran? And you also, of course, know Danish society and also Norwegian culture. So where are we missing out?
Yes, I tested my rusty Danish moments ago. But listen, no, I wanna kind of build on what Beni said, and to your question, you asking me, sitting here in Washington, D.C., about 10,000 kilometers away from Iran, asking me, what are we not getting about Iran? Let me flip that question around. What is the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei not getting about Iran? That's a much bigger question to ask, because he's not getting his own people. And this takes me to what Beni was talking about. This is a regime, and I use the word regime because I know they don't like it. They hate the word regime. And they, again, I don't want to, it's not us and them. Them here means the Islamic Republic. To me, it's a regime. There is a president in the Islamic Republic, but let's be honest, he wouldn't be the president if Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, and the Revolutionary Guards did not want him as the president. So let me just focus on Khamenei. He, long time ago, had an opportunity when he became supreme leader back in 1989. It's a long time ago, 1989. Think about it. He's had power since 1989, right? The Cold War was still going on. He has had many rounds of protests. And each time, instead of listening to the people, instead of trying to listen and compromise, he has believed that the only way forward is to repress better, to contain better, to kill more, as we just saw in recent weeks. That is his approach. Let me also say where Ali Khamenei comes from in terms of historical context, because we are all shaped by our history, right? Denmark probably shaped me a lot more than I like to think or admit, but I was shaped by 10 years of living in Denmark. What did Ali Khamenei get shaped by? Let me point two things out. He is a first-generation revolutionary. He's part of that revolution in 79, 47 years ago, that brought the Shah down. They used force. In their case, force worked. And in their case, the Shah refused to kill his own people to stay on the crown. The Shah famously said, if I have to kill to stay as king, then I don't want the job. Khamenei learned that you don't compromise. Shah was trying to say, I listened to the protesters, and he tried to compromise, and he didn't use force. Khamenei is doing all the opposite things. He's killing. He's not compromising, and he hopes this is going to save his day. I think he's wrong. And the other thing I point out very quickly is the fall of Soviet Union. Khamenei became supreme leader in 1989, pretty much when glasnost was happening in the Soviet Union. Gorbachev was introducing reform. In Khamenei's mind, that's why the Soviet Union collapsed. So what I'm saying is, here's a man who believes in force. He doesn't want to listen to his own people, 70% of whom were born after the revolution of 79. So today, to Beni's point, you have in Iranian society a tiny minority of about probably 15%, maybe 20% if you want to push it, who have the guns, who have the money, who have everything that the oil revenue gets, and they look at everybody else as enemies. The protesters are not 15-year-old kids, they're Mossad agents. And this is where Iran is today, where you have a supreme leader, because of his lust for power, has dehumanized his opponents and has armed his foot soldiers to go out there and kill in the name of preserving the revolution, whatever that revolution stands for, and we can get into that later. But I think that's the key for me, is how Iran is now split. There is no one Iran today. There is the Ali Khamenei Iran, and there is the majority of Iranians who want a very different life than the one they live under right now. But let me stop here. I'm sure we get into some of that. I love to touch on the regional aspects, some of the things Beni talked about, because I think it's key. But we'll leave that for later.
Yeah, we'll get back to that for sure. Just follow up on these demonstrations, Mr. Sabti. You said we have had them many times. They seem to be building. This was the most, what you've seen in this year was the most violent so far.
Yes.
How many more times can we amplify the demonstrations and the regime will still be able to maintain power?
Well, as Alex said, they will use all the tools, and they are not afraid. The regime is not afraid to kill as many as they can to remain in the power. They came to rescue Bashar Assad in 2011, and they brought the IRGC units in 2011 who depressed in 2009 the people inside Iran, the demonstrations of the millions and everything. So they know very well about that. They know how to manage that. As long as there will be no help from abroad, a foreign power, yes, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Iranians alone cannot do that. And what is going on inside Iran is not democracy for these 47 years, whatever president we had, and Alex explained about that very good. They are not moderate, they are not logic, they are not reformists. They don't want to recognize the West or other ideologies. You know, from time to time, I send some posters from the organizations of propaganda of Iran regime, to some official figures or ministries, foreign ministry of Israel or others, to use to show how Iranian regime thinks. One of them was, after the Israel-Iran war, one of them was an Iranian rocket or missile hits the Statue of Liberty in America. Why? Why you have that? Mm-hmm. They don't want any kind of peace. They are saying to you that it's us or nothing. Mm-hmm. Our ideology is above everything. Our superiority is above everything. So, and anyone inside Iran or outside Iran cannot resist that. This is the reason that the protests in Iran, if it's only the people, it cannot work. They don't have the guns, they don't have the means to succeed. The revolution in '79 was successful because some parts of the army or other parts of the Iranian regime before '79 of the king were also Islamists. So they changed, they had a shift. They became loyal to the revolution and not to the king anymore. This is one of the most important reasons in my eyes. So we don't have that. The regime is so hanging together that 10% of the Iranians who are loyal to the regime, they have so many benefits from the regime. So, and they are standing very hard. And it's very hard to break them without any help from outside.
Just a very quick follow-up. We have seen the death figures after the regime cracked down on the latest demonstrations, ranging from a handful of thousand, which is, of course, a tragedy and
yes,
a lot, up until tens of thousands. What figure do you trust?
I think the number of the casualties is something between 30,000 to 60,000. No one knows the real number. The day before yesterday, they found 50 bodies of women that were thrown in a jail, in a yard, behind some old buildings. 50 bodies. Suddenly you have 50 bodies in Iran, and it's a regular thing. The more important and interesting number for me, and it's more a loyal number that we can trust, 450,000 wounded people. 450,000 wounded people. It's about 3 or 4 cities in Israel, 450,000 people. And you can have the statistics from the doctors. They even arrested doctors and nurses. Because of that, they took care of them, and also they wrote about, the doctors have to have the reports to follow and to give medicine and everything. So 450,000 wounded people are huge. It means how many millions were out. So this is a better number for me.
So, Alex, one thing is the regime holding on to power domestically, but Iran, of course, also is a regional player. And how powerful is it really militarily, in your estimation? And I ask because we have seen, a regime that is not afraid of threatening with military force. At the same time, we have seen campaigns against it from Israel and the United States, which have been sort of, restricted in its scope, but still wildly successful. Midnight Hammer this June, also Israeli forces taking out the anti-aircraft capacities and so forth. So how powerful is it in your estimation?
Let's just remember, Iran is a country of about 91, 92 million people. It's a pretty large country in terms of population. It's 3 times the size of France. A significant civilization going back at least 5,000 years. And any of those sort of realities that I just touched on would empower whoever is in power in Tehran, the central government. So we need to look at the totality of the package in terms of where some of the strength comes from. Some of it doesn't come from ideology, comes from the history, the depth of institutions that have been there for a long time. So I want to put that aside next to the fact that there is no doubt that after the October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel and what happened since in terms of the Israelis taking the fight to their adversaries, the likes of Hezbollah for sure, totally in a different position today than they were just a few years ago. Assad in Syria is gone. The Houthis are still a menace, if you will, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's the crown jewel of Iran's proxy network, or as Beni liked to call them, the terror organizations. I would say they have certain strengths. I wouldn't discount Iran's capacity to be a spoiler. They can do a lot of damage. I don't underestimate that for a second. They can do a lot of damage on their way out. And this is where we are at in terms of the policy discussions. When they say, I spent a lot of time in the Gulf countries, and I hear officials say, look, when the Iranians say that if they get hurt, they're going to start throwing everything they have at us in those Gulf countries, they take them seriously. They remember what Saddam Hussein did when he was kicked out of Kuwait. So Iran's strength also depends greatly on who is looking. United States, we saw that during the 12-day war, has the technological capacity to fly B-2s from Central America, fly across the world, drop bombs, finish their business in a couple of hours and come back. And it can feel pretty secure because Iran's arm doesn't reach the United States, certainly not directly. Whereas if you're sitting in the region, Iran's capacity to be a spoiler and hurt you is measured differently. And that's, I think, is a very important distinction. But overall, I would say, here's how I look at it. Late 1990s, a fellow by the name of Qasem Soleimani became the head of the Quds Force with the external branch of the Revolutionary Guards. And over the course of the next decade, he developed something that looks like the doctrine of forward defense, which basically, without boring you too much, it's about this. Iran is better off fighting its enemies outside of Iran's borders in places like Syria or Lebanon, not inside of Iran. This is called the forward defense. And Qasem Soleimani was probably the key architect in many ways. Today, forward defense as a model is dead, because Iran is not fighting its enemies outside. The IDF is, or the Mossad, whoever you want to look at, the CIA, they're over Tehran's skyline. They're infiltrated the place. War has come to Iran. That's what I'm trying to say. And this means, if you're logical, and I'm not sure if Ali Khamenei is logical, I wouldn't say he's suicidal, and I don't want to play psychologist, but I think it's really important to think about the man's character, because Suicidal people don't stay in power for almost 40 years. So we have to give him credit. He does do cost-benefit analysis. But if he did a cost-benefit analysis right now, given what's happening inside of Iran, I would have thought this is an absolutely amazing opportunity for strategically for Khamenei, if he can do that, to say, you know what we've done in the region has been wrong. We need to focus on listening to our own people, do nation building in Iran, not go after looking for fights with Israel or United States or whoever it is. But that's not Ali Khamenei. Ali Khamenei's personality is a stubborn one. He believes that maybe he even believes God is on his side. I don't know. And that's why you can expect some Iranian concessions, maybe, if these diplomatic talks between US and Iran go forward, maybe they will change some of their policies. But fundamentally, Khamenei has not decided to accept defeat, because I think Iran has been defeated in the region. And I actually would say this: the Iranian people are delighted that Iran has been defeated in the region, because what Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guards have been doing in the Arab world doesn't serve Iranian interest. It's an ideological fight that the regime, with maybe 15% of support, has been pursuing at the expense of Iranian national interest. I mean, look, imagine if Norway was out there, I don't know, in Morocco or somewhere far away, spending a lot of money on foreign policy projects. Nothing good came out of it for average Norwegians back in Norway. This has been going on for 47 years in terms of Iranian foreign policy, and Iranians, frankly, are sick and tired of it.
That was a good quip there, Alex. If I may just quickly follow up, and this is just explain to someone who watches this from outside and doesn't really get it. So historically, from what I understand, Israel was not an ally, but was on friendly terms with Iran. And it was by direct, so that was intentional from Israel's side, all the way back to David Ben-Gurion. And also, if you look at a map, Israel and Iran they don't share a border. They shouldn't be necessarily involved in any disputes. And yet we have, as you both have mentioned, the proxies. So, Alex, what happened? Like, why did this relationship completely fall out? And also, what's the reason behind these proxies? Are they single-handed? Are they intended only to strike at Israel and undermine Israel? And why is that?
Sorry, you asked the wrong guy, because I'm working on a book project right now on this. What is it Iran wants in the Arab world? And oftentimes what I come to conclude is actually the grand strategy doesn't exist. It's oftentimes opportunities that present themselves. I think the creation of Hezbollah in Lebanon is a prime example. How the Iranians early on really didn't know what Hezbollah was going to do, but it became what it is today because opportunities presented themselves. But fundamentally, on the question of Israel, look, the Shah of Iran, who was the king at the time when Israel was created or founded back in 1948, he was lukewarm, but he very quickly realized that Israel had something to benefit Iran in terms of advancing Iranian national interest. Israel famously was anti-Soviet, later on, not initially, which is something that the Shah liked. They were all on the same side as non-Arabs in an Arab-dominated Middle East. Again, but I want to bore you, but that's how the sort of idea of the periphery doctrine came about, where Israel teamed up with countries like Ethiopia and Iran, the Kurds of Iraq, as promoting their interests. The Shah was on board. It made sense. It wasn't ideological. The Shah also walked away from Israel when he felt Israel was pushing its luck too much in the case of some of the wars, particularly after the 67 war. So the Shah, in my view, when I look at history, he looked at Israel not as a Jewish state, as a country that had something to offer Iran in a region where they had common enemies. Now, 1979 onwards, you have a man called Ali Khamenei, now and before him Ayatollah Khomeini, who took a very ideological view. And for them, Israel just has no right to exist, which is at the heart of this conflict. So Israel didn't start this fight. Israel would have walked away and looked at other issues that it needs to deal with. The Iranians came, as you pointed out, from 1,000 kilometers away and planted themselves in places like South Lebanon or in Gaza, and saying that, you know what, we will do whatever we can to destroy you. So when I go on I don't go on Iranian national TV, but on Persian language TV, when that question comes up, I always have to remind everyone who started the fight. But really, the answer to your question about the proxies, the proxies are no longer really of use to Iran. But is Khamenei ready to give them up, accept this reality, act like a nation state, like Henry Kissinger famously wanted them to do? He's not there yet. But if this regime survives, huge if, I don't know, if this regime survives, whoever comes after Khamenei, that's probably the most important question to have to answer. What do we do with our foreign policy? Because it's not delivering. It's nothing but a drain on the state coffers, and our people hate what we do in the region. It's isolated us. We're turning into North Korea, for God's sake, and we need to change course. But while Khamenei is alive, and he's 86, while he's alive, I don't expect him to come out and admit what I just said has been, the shortcomings and the failures of this regional policy.
Yes, of course, Beni.
I want to have some notes about the two last questions and the things that Alex said, and maybe bring some examples and details about that, so you can feel what happened here. About Khamenei, unfortunately, he's my client for these 40 years, since I ran away from Iran, but I couldn't get rid of the Iran regime, also in Israel. In his first years, he was a very afraid guy. In 91, when Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait, he cooperated with US to kick him out of Kuwait. And there were some radicals in Iran 3 years after Iran-Iraq war that said, oh, our Muslim brother Saddam Hussein is fighting US. We have to go and help him. We had demonstrations of radicals inside Iran against US and helping Saddam. Khamenei said no. The interest of the country was higher than the radical Islam. In 2001, after 9/11, the same. He was afraid of Americans. 2003, they had the first agreement, nuclear agreement, voluntarily. They shut down all the facilities without shooting anything. But in these 5-7 last years, he became messianic. I don't know, he lost it. And Alex, yes, once someone said, one of his generals said, that God is talking through Khamenei. This is a very bad thing for a politician to be said. It's a very bad place to be, because you lose your proportions. And we see that this is the reason that he is not giving up in anything in these 7, 8, 10 years. And part of it's because the Biden administration. After the first period of Trump, and when Biden comes there, he begins to say to himself, okay, I can beat anyone. I'm here. They are going, and I'm still here. God is with me, and that's it. So this is, I think, what happened to this regime. Something about the war, and you have to know that if Israel takes the time for many times, and it takes time that until they are angry, the Israelis. But when they get angry, don't be there. Really, you don't want to be there. Okay, Hania goes to Tehran and explodes his bed, or something in that bed explodes, and I don't know what happened. Maybe his wife also had something to do with that, also. And men, yes, and about that, in this 12 days war, Israel took away about 44, 45 generals in their homes, and 18 nuclear scientists. 2 of the generals, and I asked the men to listen carefully. 2 of the men were not at home with the wives. They were with the lovers, with the mistress. So do your calculation. Don't take your phone with yourself if you go to the mistress. Okay, Israel knows about you. The regime didn't know, the wife didn't know about it, but Israel knows about it. So please, be careful. Really, it's very important. And your other question?
Well, I would, if I may ask you a follow-up on this, because it sounds from both of you that we're really looking at a very, a regime with reduced strength at the moment, a diminished regime. Mm. What does that do for the region? Are we looking at a region where Iran is, and the regime in its current form, is a less strong player, a less decisive player?
Of course. They had so many losses Hezbollah is not there as it was before. Yes, the missiles, most of the missiles are there, but the organization as an organization is not there. Hamas is not. And the problem is they took this region and maybe all the world, all the Western world, and I will tell about that, that Iranian regime is also here. The problem,
in
yes, in Oslo and everywhere. They take us, like the US Embassy, they take us as hostages all the time, since the beginning of the revolution. When there were these voices of Trump announcing war against Iran regime because what they did in the protests, so they said, okay, if you shoot us, we will shoot all the region. And they take all the people in the region as hostages. And of course, Saudi Arabia, UAE, every one of them are very afraid of that because the things that Alex very well said. But I think after almost 50 years, we have to understand Middle East is a sick, like a sick person that is suffering and afraid of the surgery. We have to go to that surgery to take that cancer away.
Which the cancer?
The Iranian regime. To have the surgery, it's a painful thing. It's like you are sick and you don't take the injection. You are so afraid of the injection or the surgery. God, I hope that no one needs that. But the Middle East needs that. The activities of Iran regime are so evil against their people, against us, against the other countries. You know, you remind me, Alex, I was a very young soldier in a open source unit in Israel, in IDF. It's a very good unit. All you have to do is watching TV, listening the radio, and put your legs on the table and read newspapers. This was our job, very good job. And this is the reason that I never came out of Iran. I see the television, I listen the radio, and I see the same newspaper. So this is the reason that I'm still the radical, the only radical Iranian that left, really. So I remember that there was an interview with some radical guy from the intelligence service or Quds Force, something like that. And he said, we have to establish Hezbollah in every country in Middle East. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I never found it anymore. It was in 1991 or 92. And you know, Iranians tell the truth in the past, far past. After that, they make the lies. They suddenly have new memories. But if you go back, you can see the truth. He said that they want to establish Hezbollah Turkey, Hezbollah Saudi, Hezbollah Kuwait, Hezbollah everything. So, yes, of course, they didn't succeed. But this is the thing that the countries in the region have to know. The Iranian regime will never stop. And if they are afraid now, it's better to make the surgery today, to take the cancer out, rather than 5 years later. Mm-hmm. This is, I think, what we have to understand, because this is what Israel understood. After that very bad day, this disaster of October 7, and it was just one day, okay? They had, I have to admit, they won for one day. So many casualties, so many dead and wounded and the hostages. After that, what happened to Gaza, I'm very sorry for what happened today. But they brought it to themselves. Because we didn't remove the cancer on time. And
being Hamas in this case.
Yes, Hamas is the same. Today is the same. And the same thing happened. What happened to Iranian regime is the same thing that happened to Hamas. They thought that they can beat Israel. They cannot beat Israel, really. I see the Israelis angry in the traffic. You don't want to mess them. Really, you don't want to be there. So don't. So the faster, the better.
Alex, your assessment of the power dynamics in the Middle East now, is Israel really the strongest player? Is Iran, the Iranian threat, more or less eradicated? Who are the strong players at this point?
Oh, that's a big question. I wish I was smart enough to answer that, but let me give it a try. Look, I mean, go back to something I said earlier. Threat perception obviously very much depends on who is looking, the eyes of the beholder, as they say. So if you are, I don't know, if you're in the energy markets, the fact that 20% of the world's oil gets out of the Strait of Hormuz and the Iranians, maybe, who knows, have the potential to at least shut it down for weeks or so, that's a threat perception for at least energy consumers, right? So, what I'm trying to say is it really matters who's looking at it. If you're sitting in Dubai, if you're the CEO of Emirates Airlines or the Dubai airport that just received 90 million passengers last year, any kind of a conflict 100 miles away to your north will have a big impact on your commercial, your commercial life, basically. So it really comes down to who's looking at the issue. So I think I agree with Beni. Islamic Republic since 1979 has not done anything good overall for the region. Sure, it's got pockets of supporters here and there, but they are a tiny minority. Militant Islam has failed as a governing model. It doesn't govern well. It doesn't produce. It doesn't provide services. Sure, if you have guys with suitcases of dollars flying from Tehran to Dahia, South Beirut, you can give handout to supporters, Shia supporters of Hezbollah in Lebanon, but that's not exactly how you produce. That's a relationship when you got an overlord giving money to minions, to their supporters, but when the money runs out, then what? So Iran has not, as a system, as an Islamist system, delivered on the economics, failed entirely, is way behind. In terms of diplomacy, look how isolated the place is. And in terms of the military aspect of it, as we were discussing, once Israel decided, you know what, after October 7th, I'm not going to sit here and watch you guys build up your strength on my doorstep, and took the fight to Iran, the Iranians weren't in a position to essentially stop what Israel did to them. So, obviously, huge factor to keep in mind is Israel's not doing this alone. I hear what Beni's saying. I've been to Israel many times, formidable capacity to operate, but it's backed by the United States, and that makes a big difference, and I'm sure Beni agrees with that. And the Iranians, what have they done in terms of the United States? They have done the opposite. Death to America. America needs to leave the Middle East. So this is a regime that I would argue has engaged in reckless sloganeering for so long. Beni and I remember those days in the early 1980s in Iran as kids having to shout slogans. We didn't know what the hell we're saying. No to the West, no to the East. Iran's going to be separate, and from everybody else, we're going to go independent. What does that mean when you're saying you're going to challenge the Soviet Union, the United States simultaneously? Where do you get the motivation from to think like that, to think you can do it? That's been a big part of the problem. This self-perception, this grandized way of looking at yourself when you don't actually have the tools in the toolbox to do much about it. But again, back to your question in terms of the Middle East. Look, the region overall likes to see this Iranian regime slapped around, if I could be crude about it, because it was getting too big in its words about, how formidable it was. It turns out it's not formidable. But I have to say, and maybe this is the first area of disagreement with Beni, I love his take on this, but when I travel in the region, in Turkey, in the Gulf countries, Israel has also become a bit of a question mark for these countries. And I think Beni and many others probably know exactly what I'm talking about. An Israel that can do what it wishes might be well, good, fine, as long as it's targeted Iran. But the question they have in the region, what if Israel tomorrow picks up a fight with, say, Turkey? And we know the Turks have those kinds of concerns. So again, I can answer your question about who is up and who is down in the Middle East different ways. I would say Israel today is obviously the most formidable military power, certainly much ahead of Iran. Iran can still hurt Israel because they still have, 2,000 or so ballistic missiles. But they are not in a position to challenge the status quo of the Middle East. This is not, Hitler's army in 1939. They're very much on the defensive. But going forward, we have tensions in the region. We have the Saudis, the Emiratis, as we've seen recently, they have their own issues. The Turks have their own issues with the Israelis and so on. I could go on. So there are issues across the board. But here's my bottom line, I'll stop. As somebody, I grew up in 1980s Denmark. I don't remember as a kid At the time, I was, with a certain party without being named, but that party was for European integration, which I supported. I still do. I know Norwegians have voted against it repeatedly, but you're protecting your fish, and that's fine. But look, the point is this: integration happened in Europe for a reason. Second World War happened. 7 million people died. Europe has gone through tragedy after tragedy in recent centuries in terms of mass casualties because of Catholics and Protestants killing one another, or some prince killing another prince or his people. My point is, Europe woke up after 1945 and realized we got to get together, and the boat needs to be lifted for everyone. European Union essentially is born. Middle East doesn't have anything like that, has never had anything like that. And this mentality of zero-sum game, if I win, you lose, and the other way around, this is not the recipe for the future. Now, you could say a lot of things about Abraham Accords, whether it was symbolic, it was just a PR step, it didn't really matter. But the idea of the region recognizing, say, Iran, recognizes Israel's right to exist, and others do. And Israel becomes part of the region. And others kind of basically respect that they have sovereignty issues, they have national interest, and there's a dialogue of sorts among these nations instead of this zero-sum mentality that has dominated. Then I think you can see a region that starts integrating, and it would be to the benefit of everyone in the region. So I would say that's where I would hope. You didn't ask me to be hopeful, but let me just throw it in there. I hope the region wakes up from Arab Spring and all the last 2 decades or so of war, because the region is suffering. This is a region that has potential to do great. I mean, Iran right now is a sanctioned economy. It should be a top 20 economy. It has the potential to be a top 20 economy in a short order, and others can do well too. But you need a fundamental rethink in terms of how you behave as nation states in the Middle East. Institutions need to be created that create a foster dialogue where nation states basically can hold each other's hands as they walk in the same direction, even though obviously there will be differences along the way, which is not unusual. We see European integration didn't happen without any issues over the last, seven decades. There will be issues, but fundamentally you need to look at it different in terms of your region. Everybody benefits if things go well. Everybody will suffer if things don't go well.
We will get back to the points you hinted at, Alex, with the Abraham Accords and the role of the United States, and also Donald Trump and his administration. But first, I wanted to ask you, Beni, at this point, from what both of you are saying, you could sort of see the outlines of Israel having regained its deterrence in the region. What is the Israeli strategy moving forward at this point, security-wise, for the region? Is there any?
Well, I have to bring all the Israeli government to the place, so maybe they can answer. I don't think that they know the answer too. But I think Israel is not seeking wars. I don't think that after these wars with these proxies and terror organizations, Israel is seeking for war with Turkey and Qatar or others. There were some things that happened, but as you can see, for example, in Syria, Israel is trying to push back, yes, Turkey, but not in war terms, but negotiating with them through US, or if the Turks are coming to Gaza to help, to influence, not, but it's done by talks. Qataris, again, it's a very complicated issue but we have there, and they buy all the world with money. It's a very bad thing. But Israel is not going for another wars. This is one thing that nobody wants. And I think the strategy is to bring more cooperations. Mm-hmm. This is what Israel is going to push more and more about, and not the Saudis. We are chasing the Saudis, for example, for so many years, and October 7, of course, destroyed that chance in that days. It was almost there, and October 7 destroyed that. I think Israel is in that place of making more and more cooperations, regardless to what problems were before.
So in that case, Israel is sort of done with its campaign after October 7th, because it was that country was lashing out at everyone in the region. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, at its core.
But it's the same thing. It's the hands and legs of the same body.
Right.
We are talking about the Shiite axis.
Yes.
And the others, they don't have this kind of activity. The Turks even, they don't have terror organizations. You know, okay, Erdogan says some things and have some influences, and Qatar gives money, but it's not the same. They don't have armies around Israel.
But
that ring of fire. Iran regime is the only one who did that.
Yes, but so from an Israeli point of view, the response after October 7th is a completed objective at this point.
Yes, I think that we did that, we had that, and we are going for cooperation, more and more cooperation. There will be indifferences always. We are not in the same page with the traditions of these nations in the region. As Alex said, the education is the most important thing. You know, in this region, I think without re-educating all the nations, and Iranians actually are in the best place in that thing. Oh, you asked something about how that came to how the revolution happened, or how are they anti-Semitic or not. You know, my mother tells me that in the 60s and 70s, you said about the Shah and Israel relationship. It was just above. It was very artificial. It was not in the people. The people, I'm very sorry to say, they were very anti-Semitic because of the clerics and because of the radical left that was supported by Soviet Union, because they wanted to change the regime. And anti-Semitism was part of that. My mother went to a football game between Israel and Iran, and all the people came with stones and with bottles to throw on the Israelis, and they had to run away and put a goal to themselves. So they lose and they run away. Really. She was there and she said, so this was Iran in the revolution around in these last 30 years, the Iranian people changed because of social media, because of internet. They see Israel, they see the Jews. They are fond of us. We are really like brothers now. I wish for the other nations also to be in that place. UAE is also in that place. Bahrain is in that place. So we have a lot to cooperate. This is the Israeli strategy. To recognize each other, things can be much, much better.
So, Alex, you brought up the Abraham Accords, which did I understand you correctly that you were sort of questioning whether they are more a symbolic gesture than a real political project? Or so basically, what are we looking at in terms of the agreements being made between Israel and other countries in the region? But primarily, I guess, the United States, the role of the United States. You're speaking here from Washington. How important is the Trump administration's objectives in the region?
Yeah. So let me be very clear. I was a supporter of the Abraham Accords to the extent that matters, but I did support it. But I also remember from get-go, I said, and I remain committed to this argument, unless the Arab world, Iran is not the issue here. Iranian public opinion, as Beni said, really wants to go and focus on its own issues. Let somebody else deal with the Palestinian issue. Iran is not the issue. Issue is the Arab world. It's the boys and girls on the street level from Morocco to Yemen. If I was Israel, I'd worry about them. I wouldn't worry about Iran. And there, the rights of the Palestinians matters. And Abraham Accords was supposed to push the ball forward. By and large, it hasn't. By and large, it hasn't. On that, and you can come up with reasons why that happened, because, you know, after October 7th, Israel was essentially in fighting for its existence. So the idea that, they're going to prioritize the, a campaign of winning hearts and minds of Arab Street wasn't exactly on their mind, and that's understandable. But going forward, Abraham Accords really needs to, because I'm essentially someone who believes that the two-state solution, and again, somebody like me who's traveled in Israel from the Galilee to Elad and back and forth, and I see the challenges in terms of where will be the border. who's going to have this village, that. It's not going to be easy. But end of the day, and I'm not the expert to talk about it, end of the day, the Palestinians are not going to go anywhere. Whatever the number is, 7 million or so in total. They're not going to go anywhere. They're not all going to move to South Sudan. And that's the challenge of Israel. That's the challenge of UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, others who believe, and I rightly so, that integration of the region going forward is the only way. But the Palestinians need to have a place in that. We're not going to close our eyes and pretend that Iran created the Palestine issue. It didn't. Iran used the Palestine issue. And, how many times have I met Palestinians who have told me, we wish Iran would just stay away because they have nothing good to offer us, because the struggle here is not going to be won by arms. That's all Iran can offer us. So the Abraham Accords as a concept, wonderful, needs to go forward, but it needs to take seriously into account the Palestinian factor. As long as that is an issue that resonates with the Arab world, then that needs to be part of the calculations in terms of how the Abraham Accords will grow and sustain itself going forward. Otherwise, it becomes basically UAE and Israel, having a good time about Abraham Accords. But that's thinking small. Abraham Accords could be much bigger than that, but it needs to have a credible Palestine factor in it. In terms of your question of the Trump administration, look, the Trump administration, you just saw the Munich Security Conference as I did. This year was very different from last year. So who knows where the Trump administration is going? They got about 5 guys working on all the problems of the world, and one of them is the guy's father-in-law. So who knows? But the problem that I see here with the Trump administration's Middle East policy is they're looking for quick wins. They're looking for wins that, you sign a deal, you move on. You can't do that. Earlier, I was talking about integration and how Europe as a success story can be emulated. So Abraham Accords is something you can build on. I mean, you can come up with all sorts of projects that are ongoing right now. For example, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, economic corridor. The Trump administration loves the concept because it would be a challenge to the Chinese-led Belt and Road Initiative. That's wonderful. If you think the future of this world is between 2 powers, United States and China rivaling one another, then you want to take as much from the other guy as you can. And in the Middle East, you have an opportunity to bring countries closer to the United States, but you got to stay the course. You cannot look for handshakes and one-off deals. You need to start looking at it in terms of long-term projects. And I've got to tell you, because you raised the issue of the fact that I sit in Washington, D.C. I'm a naturalized American citizen today. I vote in this country and I care what happens. But I remember when I was in Denmark or when I lived in the United Kingdom, foreign policy was so much more of a collective effort. It was about the national interest. The Social Democrats and the Conservatives or Danish People's Party, and they would sit down and think of what's good for Denmark. You didn't have to zigzagging back and forth based on ideology. And the same was true to some extent in the United Kingdom when I lived there. The Trump administration has policies today that the Democrats on the other side of the aisle just don't believe in. So that's a fundamental problem that's not limited to the Middle East. The United States needs to start thinking about what do we, the United States as a country, have as our bottom line national interest and go about achieving those objectives and not having policies that last for 4 years, somebody else comes in and walks away from. That unfortunately has been counterproductive. Now, I know our discussion today is not about US foreign policy, but I really think it's an important aspect of what's missing. The consensus that has in the past allowed the United States to be a superpower. I mean, the Marshall Plan wouldn't have happened if the Republicans were for it, the Democrats were against it, or vice versa. It happened because there was a bipartisan consensus. This is good for the United States. And we need to get back to more of that in the US capital in terms of policymaking going forward, because that creates confidence in countries around the world saying, now, this isn't just about Trump. This is about what the Americans want, and we can be assured that it will last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So again, you need to recreate confidence around the world, including the Middle East. And I think the US can do that. So let me stop there on that hopeful note.
Just a quick follow-up before we go to you, Betty, is that okay? So a somewhat blunt question, I guess, Alex, but since we were on the topic of American foreign policy, would you support if the United States did in quotation marks, a Maduro in Iran and went in and took out the military leader and detained him?
Look, if the United States puts his mind to it, that might be a possibility. And I don't think anybody, maybe with a few percentage of Iranian society or people around the world will miss Khamenei or the Revolutionary Guards. These people have not done anything good for Iran. So I don't think anybody's going to miss them. But the question is much bigger than who's going to miss them. The question is the United States intellectually investing in that kind of an operation? Do I tell you right now that I see signs that the US is planning that kind of intelligence-led, because that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. The CIA was ahead months, if not years. There was a connection. Folks were having meetings, secret meetings in Florida before the Maduro operation happened. It doesn't happen because of AI. It requires human interaction. It requires you using your intelligence capacity to peel people off from the other side, to create reason for folks to defect. If you can do that with the Iranian regime, I think that would be a smart way of going about it. But again, I don't see the signs. I might be wrong. I'm in the open source. There's a lot of things I don't know, I don't see. But I tell you this as well, and I'll stop. The way, to Beni's point, Israel, United States were able to do what they did during the 12-day war, taking about 40 senior members of the so-called elite Revolutionary Guards and so on. That means the system is badly infiltrated. That means you got eyes and ears everywhere in Iran. That means the question maybe becomes, do I just use my assets to pinpoint who I'm going to kill, which factory I'm going to hit next? Or can I use my intelligence depth in Iran to actually start thinking, can I make this guy to turn and become essentially a defector? You start peeling people off from a regime that already is a sinking ship. You show people a way out, then you don't have to repeat the Iraq War of 2003, which is unfortunately what most people think about. When people talk about US strikes on Iran, they think 2003 invasion of Iraq, 500,000 soldiers, disaster, billions of dollars. What we have to recognize is if you put your effort into thinking in terms of original ideas, look at the basic reality of a regime hated by its own people. A regime whose biggest enemy is not the United States, a regime whose biggest enemy is not Israel, a regime whose biggest enemy are the Iranian people. How do you turn that? How do you weaponize that? How do you do that? Maybe we're going to talk about Reza Pahlavi in the opposition, but those are the types of arguments that one could make about, instead of just, Venezuela-style decapitation, which alone will not work because Khamenei will be replaced by somebody else. You need a bigger game ready to implement.
Right, Beni, please.
Yeah, I wanted to go back about the Israeli strategy toward the Palestinians and about what Alex said. Israel, even if you hear this government or these recent years that they want other things rather than a Palestinian authority that runs itself, it's good for politics and for propaganda. It's not as Alex said, you cannot really get rid of or vanishing 2 million or 3 million Palestinians. The problem is the mistake of Israel was that they didn't do it quickly in the 70s or maybe in the 80s before Hamas establishment and interfere of Iran regime. And now we are stuck with these ideological movements. You know, when you look on the names of the Palestinian organizations, and I bring it back to you, to your country in a moment. When you look on the Palestinian movements in the 60s, 70s, for example, PLO, it's Palestinian Liberation Organization. You have the word Palestine in that. It's a physical thing. They are fighting for country, for a land, something to argue. We came to that point in 93 here to talk about how we can give you some percent of the land, but it was too late. Today we have Hamas or IRGC. Hamas is Harakat Muqawama Islamiyah, the Islamic resistance movement. You don't hear the word Palestine there anymore. This is the reason that all these demonstrations outside of this place and all over Europe or US or Canada are false. They are not fighting for freeing the land. It's not about country. You know a very ridiculous thing? Iran always votes against two-state solution. Always in UN, they are against two-state solution because there has to be one state only, Palestine or something Islamic. I know that it's philosophic and it's not the, okay, how they do that or the technical thing and how many missiles. No. But in Middle East, words and the psychology are more important than the technical part. Because when you believe and you are in that messianic place and you are in that hubris place like the Iranian leader or Hamas or everything, so when you say Palestine, you are dreaming about something else, about destruction of the other, about destruction of Israel. This is the main purpose of these demonstrations that you have here. 300,000 people, 400,000, 500,000 people, and they are praying in the middle of the street. This is really, take them out of the streets. This is a very bad thing. I stand in the traffic all the day in Israel. I don't want it here. And you have the snow, you have all these problems. Please, take these demonstrations out. Unless they bring in the word Palestine, the real physical Palestine, and to talk about it, to argue about it, and with the right argument, even this government or the other government, they will accept, because the world will press Israel, or the Middle East will have pressure on Israel, and the Israeli people want the peace, want the two-state solution. But what can we do after you see that you give and give and give, and you have this October 7th? This is the problem. We are stuck with these terror organizations instead of talking about the price. So taking Iran out is another solution for that also. And bringing Saudi Arabia inside that, UAE, other forces in this issue, it's part of Abraham Accords. Talking about peace and what can happen with the Palestinians, it can be part of that, but that evil powers have to go out of that.
So I want to ask you both about Pahlavi, the oppositional figure in Iran. But before that, just to finish up with the topic of the United States. When the demonstrations were going on this year, you had pretty unveiled threats to the regime from the United States, from the Trump administration, about help is coming and that we're sending armada groups to the region, and they were indeed relocating infrastructure, military infrastructure, in various bases. But nothing really happened. And you mentioned a death toll of between 30,000 and 60,000 as likely in the outcome in the wake of the regime's crackdown. Did the United States let the Iranian people down this time?
Yes, yes. They are very desperate. They went back home, those who are alive, and they are not really alive. They are half dead because they are hungry and then thirsty, and they saw their friends dead.
Was it seen as an encouragement? Do you think the Iranian protesters, many of them, were picking up on the communications that came from the United States?
Of course, it was a huge fuel for the protests. They heard a little bit from Israel. We encouraged them, the government or us as private figures. But U.S. president is something else. And you know, I said before that Iranians live in the past. The past is very important for them. There's nostalgia, and Alex, remember that. The Iranian revolution in '79 wasn't successful unless President Carter said to the Shah, don't depress your people, let them demonstrate, give them freedom, something like that. It's very similar to what Trump said a few months ago to the Iranian people. And the Iranian people remember that. They waited for that message for 47 years. And when it came, I cannot give you the feeling how the Iranians felt. We really, even the Israeli Iranians, and we are abroad, and we are also Jewish, and we are not so Iranians anymore. But we felt, really, I wanted to be in Iran. And even if I was hurt or something, it was worth that. I'm excited now when I'm saying that, because it's a huge fuel. I cannot bring you to imagine how much it matters for the Iranian, because they saw it once that it was very successful and has a huge influence in '79. And it actually happened in the same days that Carter said it to the Shah. And Shah just ran away, and you know the rest of that. So don't tell the Trump that I said that he copied from a democratic president. Really, please. He will. I have enough troubles. I don't want him to know that. But really, yes, he copied from the democratic president. But he failed them, and he made them desperate. He didn't come. In the Iranian eyes, it was better to bomb a very symbolic bombing in 2 places in Tehran, and they were there. They were out. They would do the job after that. And the regime also expected that, but it didn't come. It's such a not Iranian way. So I don't know if it will have the same effect. If something also happens or not happens, it won't have the effect again. One sentence about Reza Pahlavi.
Yeah, we're getting to Pahlavi. I also wanted to ask Alex, if you want to comment on that. Did the United States let the Iranian people down?
Look, if this moment had happened in early 2000s, after 9/11, and the man in the White House was George W. Bush, the United States reaction could have been very different, because at the time we had a democracy promotion agenda in the United States. But the reality is the democracy promotion agenda in the Middle East, by and large, failed. And that is the one thing Americans remember, that it didn't succeed. And that's why Donald Trump ran in 2015-16 on calling the Iraq invasion in 2003 the stupidest thing America's ever done. So we are politically in a very different place. I'm not judging this from a moral point of view. I'm saying politics matters. Donald Trump does not have the political support for anything that looks like regime change or nation building in the Middle East, or in the largest country in the Middle East of 90 million people. So, when he came out and he said what he said, I'm sure he was being influenced by people who have been hawks on Iran for a long time. People like Senator Lindsey Graham of the state of South Carolina, who I was a fundraiser with, and he was sure that the president's going to do something, and the president didn't. All the president did was he slapped some sanctions on countries that trade with Iran. Is not what Beni and many others, obviously, in Iran were expecting. Takes me to the Iranian people. Look, Donald Trump, it's not too late for him to get involved. He might have opportunities. He's going to be 3 years in the White House. A lot of people are telling him he's the Ronald Reagan of our time. He can bring this evil empire called Islamic Republic down. But he needs to go and invest in it intellectually. He needs to think about how to do it. It's not a quick win. This is not something you show up for a photo opportunity and get done. The Iranian regime has been in place for 47 years. They've been preparing to deal with external threats for a very long time. So it requires political investment. It means that you make it into something you really prioritize. And that's where I'm so not optimistic. I just don't see Donald Trump investing in that. If Donald Trump was told tomorrow the regime is about to fall in the next 48 hours, they just need you to send a couple of F-35s and drop some bombs in these 5 locations and the whole thing is over, he'll do it. But if you tell him you might have to do this for 5 years, or at least the next 3 years while you're in the White House, that's when Donald Trump is off. That is something that could change, but that's my reaction. But let me also say this. Iran's future is in the hands of the Iranian people. And that's what you should always remember. This is a country that had a constitutional revolution where people came out and forced the king to give him a parliament in 1906, over 100 years ago. Probably the first country anywhere in Asia and ahead of many European countries. This is the strength of Iranian civil society. Educated, wants change, wants political representation, and finds Ali Khamenei and his gang to be un-Iranians. I mean, Ali Khamenei is essentially not seen as an Iranian leader. He is leader of something else, but he's not an Iranian leader in the eyes of the majority of Iranians. That's an opportunity. So, yes, I understand how when they're killing thousands of people the way they do, using Chinese surveillance cameras or Russian intelligence tricks to do what they did, that you want somebody else from outside to come and be on your side. I get the temptation, but you got to realize the politics of Washington, D.C. and the United States have put some limits here. And that's the lesson for the Iranians. You want to take your country back, you got to do a lot more work and harder than you've done in terms of getting your act together as an opposition and really scare the regime in ways you've never scared it before. And not just look for a quick win because Trump decides to help you.
So let's turn now to Pahlavi. A simple question, I guess, to both of you, but starting with Beni. Is he, so we're talking about the son of the last Shah in Iran, who was ousted during a coup and a revolution, which seemed to have the people's support. Now, we are supposed to believe, and I don't say this with any personal estimation or assessment, that he is a potential candidate to lead a successful counter-revolution and come back to power. Is it so? Does he have the potential to lead a free Iran movement that will be able to topple the current regime? And also, if yes, does he have the potential to lead the country into on a more democratic path?
Yeah, so as we saw in the protests, the only name that the people shout, it's not, of course, all of the Iranians. We don't know how much support he has. But the only name that they shout through all these protests and even other protests in other years, but not so many like these days, was his name. Long live the king, bring back the kingdom, and things like that.
And
so,
the flag with the lion.
Yes, with the lion and the and sword. So symbolically, yes, he is the leader because, as I said before, Iranians love the past. They live in this nostalgia. They have a romantic side to that thing. So, and also they think that all the solutions are in the past. It's like that Jews in 48 wanted to establish a kingdom of David and Solomon. But of course, Ben-Gurion went for the modern country. The problem with the Iranians, and I'm very sad to say that that goes back to that re-education, a good re-education. No one came to the Iranian people and taught them how to reorganize themselves for a new thing, for democracy. Yes, they privately they know about liberal values, democracy from the social media, but it's not the real thing. So this is the reason that they miss the past. They see the solution in the past. And we don't see also another names in that place. He is also very wise. He says, I don't want to be the only leader. I want to be part of a coalition or to be there for the transition. And after that, the Iranian people will decide. I think he has very good advisors to say the right things.
But are the Iranian people demonstrating, who were demonstrating, hearing the messages coming from
Yes,
Pahlavi?
of course.
He's in exile, of course.
Yes, of course. For many years, through the satellite channels of the Iranian exiled televisions, and there are so many, and most of the Iranians see these TVs. 80% of them see the exiled TVs and not the Iranian TV, which we wasted some bombs. No, we really did a very good job there, because propaganda is a very bad thing in the Iranian regime, and I told about that. The evil comes from that TV. So 80% of them, yes, they hear these messages or what Iran regime does to them, where the money goes. They shouted also, after shouting, long live the king, they shouted, no to Gaza, no to Lebanon, I'm only for Iran. They are so not anti-Semitic and not so anti-Israel. They want their money for themselves and not to Gaza and not for Lebanon. This is a very beautiful and very sophisticated slogan. So, yes, he can be one of the leaders, and I don't know why this site, he became not relevant and people kind of not want him in the West. But I don't know why. And he is the most, this is the most important thing. He's the most liberal. This is what works for Israel. Okay, now I'm going to my Israeli part. He visited Israel in April 23. I was part of that group that brought him, so I'm kind of bribed. But for me, it's bringing the Abraham Accords to the Iranian place, to make the Cyrus Accords, as they call it. He is a liberal. He visited Israel. He recognizes the Jewish state and many other values, Western values. So for me, it works. It works as a tool.
Would it be reinstituting the monarchy if he came back? Is that?
I don't think so.
No, so a
I
different
don't think
kind
so.
of.
He is not in that place even. I think it's, you know, don't tell it to the Iranians, but he has 3 daughters. And it's a very huge problem for Iranians. There is no successor. It's not like England. In Iran, you have to have a son. We live in 12th century, okay? I don't know how it's here, but we are in the 12th century.
It's not too long ago we changed it with regards to the royal family.
Even from that place, he cannot be a king. I don't think even he wants to be. So, and I think one last sentence. If we begin bringing the change, it's better than to stuck with this thing, that evil thing. It's better to go even to the unknown place, and this is why I have a clash with the US. It's better to go out from this bad place rather than to be stuck with that 90 years old. And he has a 102 years old advisor, the leader. How can you advise in 2026 about something when you are 120? You know what I advised the Israeli? I have to say that. Alex, sorry. I have to say that. You know, some figures in foreign ministry of Israel asked me during the war, okay, you are very old Iranian analyst, and what you say? What can we do more? Where to bomb more? You know what I said? Where they storage the diapers for old people. Because if that 102 years old and Khamenei and others cannot go to the bathroom and they don't have their diapers, that's it. I'm serious. I don't know why you're laughing.
Well, Alex, turning to you, but that's sort of my final question. I'm looking at the organizers. Are we opening up for...
Some questions.
Yes, okay. So just...
For that, right?
Yeah, people want to ask questions. Final question from me, Alex, if I may, and that is, with this, the peace board, Trump's peace board, does it have any potential for success of stabilizing the region? Started off with the project for Gaza, yes, of course, for Gaza, and turning out to something bigger. What is your assessment?
Thanks, Alexander. Very quickly, let me just comment on what Beni just said. Look, I'm maybe a bit more optimistic. I think if you are having an opportunity here to replace the theocracy with a monarchy, I don't see a huge fight then in terms of changing the rules so a woman can be the queen. Even though that is true, as Beni said, there's no precedent for that in Iranian history, but that can be changed because when you look at Iranian society, women are powerful. Women are, in many ways, in their own households, regardless of the regime, are treated equal. That's the culture, and that's the beautiful part. The culture is not against women. In fact, women are 60-some percent, 65, 67% of university graduates to this day in the Islamic Republic are women coming out. So I'm very hopeful about the role of women in Iranian society because, happen to have a mother who comes from that camp, if you will. So I'm hopeful. There's a lot that Iranian women will contribute, I'm sure, no questions about it. In terms of your question on the peace board, look, I'm not going to walk into a field that is really not my forte. I don't watch that space daily. Others are much better equipped to comment on that. My take on it fundamentally is that, there are lots of questions, more questions than answers in terms of will it happen? How long would it last for? The European reaction to joining the board or not, obviously, is quite telling. Nobody wants to please Donald Trump just for the sake of pleasing one man. People think in terms of, what works for international security, for Middle Eastern stability. So a lot more questions about the durability of this. Again, as a Trump initiative, it captures headlines, and that's wonderful. But does it have the legs to keep running? Because you need something that can sustain itself when you're talking about peace in the Middle East, certainly starting with the situation in Gaza and the Palestinians. So again, sorry, I don't have a good answer for you, but I think there are more questions than answers, and I don't think I'm the only one who is in that position.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Louise, I'm looking at you. Are we inviting the audience members up to the microphone? Is that how it works? Okay, yes.
Yes. So we're going to start with me. I'm going back to Tel Aviv on Wednesday.
Oh,
And I have a habit after this 2 years of checking my phone almost every, let's say, a lot to see what's going on. And I just checked now, and now there's, again, some new movement of fighter jets from the US going to the war towards Iran. What is the end game? What do you think? Like, let's say there's these negotiations going on. We don't know how they're going to go. They're tomorrow in Geneva. How am I supposed to feel about Iran? Either ways, we don't know what's going to happen. But do you think that they will be revengeful to Israel? Will they? What is your gut feeling towards what is going to be? What am I going to look towards as an Israeli?
yeah. First of all these ships and planes, they don't impress them anymore. There are more coming, and for the Iranians, it's a good thing for the price of the oil, because the Americans are wasting so many fuel, and they will come and they will go, and nothing will happen in their eyes. And if something happened, it missed the good timing. Of course, the protests are not there. They don't believe that the America is going for the head of the regime, as Alex said also. And we are not in 2003, when, yes, George Bush wanted to attack someone that begins with I in this region, Iran, Iraq. What is the difference between them? And he threw a coin or something, it came Iraq. And we had also a guy inside the Iranian system, Rouhani, who became the president later, and he made, as I said before, the first nuclear agreement voluntarily with the US, just to escape from that attack that could come to them. Today, they are not in that place. They are not afraid. They are in that messianic place that, okay, God is with us, so what America can do. This is a huge problem. And Israel, yes, will be hit. They will revenge against Israel, just like Saddam did in that days, and we had also the war. And maybe the American bases in the region, in Qatar, in Turkey, they can be also targets. Maybe Iran has some considerations about Qatar base to hit, yes, and not the Turkish one. I don't know about that. But Israel, of course, it will be part of that thing. But as long as the negotiations are going on, bringing more and more armadas, I think they don't impress Iranians. Unless something happens in surprise, like happened, but they are ready. This is the reason that also the Israeli army is very ready. We don't care about the news. Israeli chief of staff said we don't care about the news. We are very ready with our defense systems and also with attack systems. So we don't care. If something begins, we begin too.
Mm-hmm. Alex, do you want to comment on this?
No, I would say very quickly, obviously the adding of more military assets is part of the posturing. It's really at this point aimed to strengthen Americans' hand in these diplomatic talks that will resume tomorrow in Geneva. I don't necessarily think in the short term they're going to be deployed. But if I was Iran, I wouldn't necessarily think that they're not going to be deployed at all, because, I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump is against nation building and getting involved in a large scale in Iran, but that doesn't mean he can't use the Air Force to target the Iranians for many rounds. That's a risk, though. He has to factor in that there will be an Iranian retaliation. The Iranians are publicly and daily saying that they are not going to let themselves become Assad Syria. They're going to sit there and just take one blow after another, that they're going to retaliate because, as they see it, they're fighting for their survival. So the question is, who's on the list of Iranian retaliation? Israel will probably be top of the list because the Iranians have proven they can reach Israel with their ballistic missiles, that they can penetrate Israeli air defenses, not not effectively, but whatever it is, 10, 15% of their missiles landed on Israel. So that might be just good enough, because their calculation is if you get the Israelis to put pressure on Trump, that might just get the Americans to back away. And by the way, the exact same rationale is deployed when it comes to countries like in the Gulf, Saudis, Emiratis, Qataris, that, you know what, if we are going to die, we're going to take as many with us as possible. And I genuinely think that that might be one of the reasons that's holding Trump back, because these people have nowhere to hide. They will be butchered because of what they've done to their own people, to the region. So they're in for this fight for their survival, and they will try and squeeze and punish as many as they can in that last sort of Hail Mary moment of trying to see if they can get Trump to back away and if the regime can survive. A lot of moving parts here, and just my 2 cents.
Yes, I see some hands.
Michael?
First, thank you for a very fascinating insight into the situation in Iran and the bigger picture. I noticed in the news that, and also what you have been saying here about all the Gulf countries, they're very afraid of what can happen if Iran feels existentially threatened. But then I think back on the 12-day war with Israel, and I wonder, if you look at what Israel was doing to Iran, didn't they feel existentially threatened at that point? And they didn't really do anything to the Gulf countries. So what has changed in that perspective?
I think the change is that now Trump took control of that issue, of that challenge with Iran. When it was only between Israel and Iran, the Gulf countries, they don't have anything to do with that. They didn't have the influence, or yes, actually Iran blamed them that the Israeli planes went through them or things like that, but it's a logistic thing. It's not kind of attacking on being allies of Israel. In the American case, it's different. They are really a part of that American machine of war. They have bases, they have routes to attack Iran and other things. So maybe Alex can have more details, but that case was a private case between us and them. Today it's a different case.
I would just echo what Beni said. I think that's exactly right. I think the Iranians did not think the end of the regime was a potential outcome of the 12-day war. They felt that they could survive, and they did. They very quickly replaced pretty much everyone that was killed, and the regime survived to remain the brutal machine, killing machine that is just prove itself to be. So this time around, with the United States not sort of coming from behind the way it did during the 12-day war, right? The U.S. came sort of sneaky in middle of the night, dropped some strategic bombs on 3 sites and walked out, and the president declared victory. This time around might be very different, because the Iranians might decide that, you know what, this is the beginning of the end. And if there's one opportunity we have to stop this process towards our demise, is to go in with everything we have to scare as many as we can, to let the world know we're not going to go down quiet. And that's just why you hear for the first time Iranian officials threatening things like hotels, American-owned businesses in the region. They're trying to get everybody who's got an investment in the Middle East, Americans that is, who are in a position to pick up the phone and call the president and say, sir, I got about, $500 billion worth of investment across the Gulf region. The Iranians are threatening, I'm going to hurt, and I contribute to your campaign, or the Republican side, can you please not do what you're doing? Something along those lines is, I think, what the Iranians are thinking about, which is why they're out openly threatening, not just to hit military sites, but any site that they can get their hands on.
Okay, I have a question, because you're talking about the son of the Shah, as I hear it, as the only alternative. And I have some Iranian friends, and they say that the People's Mujahideen, which have a female leader, is very much supported in Iran. And my question is, if the People's Mujahideen will get into power, how will it affect the relationship with Israel?
From what I know, they don't have so many supporters inside Iran. MEK, Mujahideen Khalq, is a very strange thing. It's an Islamic communist movement. Actually, that radical lefties who brought the revolution, these are the sons and grandsons of that movement. Most of them are now in Europe, in Albany. They were in Iraq. And this is the reason that the Iranian people hate them, because when the Iran-Iraq war began, these guys, these Mujahideen Khalq, MEK, they ran away to Saddam. And they became the traitors. So, yes, they have some supporters, but I don't think that inside Iran they have so many supporters, and maybe what we see in Europe and some American figures that are connected to them, like Pompeo and Giuliani and some other senior figures, that they give us the wrong impression. I don't see how they can influence or rule Iran, and that female leader is actually they still go and say that the male, the husband is still there, but no one saw him for 45, 43 years. Some say that he was killed and they hide it. This is the biggest lie ever, I think, in the whole world. So it's a very strange movement. Maybe Alex can add to that something, but I don't see them as the leading movement.
Yeah. Well, I, again, tend to agree with Beni. I think they are very organized, but they are a relic of the Cold War. I mean, Mujahideen Khalq was essentially a student movement born in the 1960s, inspired by the likes of Soviet Union. Today, their relevance is, I don't see them as relevant. They're organized, they're well-funded, but they're very small in terms of support base. And, look, let me give you one vivid example. What is the one thing Iranian women, by and large, want to get rid of? What is the one thing they want to get rid of? That they think it stands against everything they want? It's the forced hijab. It's the veil. And the Mujahideen Khalq ladies to this day have a policy of the forced hijab. It's an Islamist, Marxist entity who really doesn't seem to inspire the younger generation, because they're not that different from the Islamic Republic. Sure, they don't have power, the other guys have power, but what's the difference then? You have the same, because Islamic Republic also was very leftist to begin with, certainly in terms of its economic policies. I don't want to pick up a fight with MEK. They don't like it when you pick up a fight with him, but as an analyst, it falls on me to speak truth to what I see. They are organized, they're well-funded, they have some supporters, certainly outside they do. They have, above all, a desire for revenge, and I sympathize with them. A lot of these MEK members, families, lost people to this Iranian regime. They were killed, they were tortured. So I understand, sympathize with the desire to revenge, but wanting revenge is not the same as having a political agenda that inspires the millions of Iranians, 70% of whom were born after 1979, who are looking for something very different. And MEK does not offer that very different future.
Yeah, I see two more hands. I think, yeah. Then we're probably running out of time after that.
Hi. So this is not an explicit question to any of you. It's more of a comment from me, and you can answer the way you like. It seemed to me, if you look back a few years after what happened in Ukraine, people were shocked, and we have no problem in Europe with legitimizing Ukraine and supporting them 100%. Further, what happened in the 7th of October, most people I know, is safe to say, support Palestine and legitimize them, even though they don't have legitimate leadership. And you can say the same about Ukraine. It's quite a corrupt country. So why is it so difficult for people to legitimize Iran? It seems to me that this is people have a discrepancy, and people are a bit confused. Another thing is that it seems like a common opinion that empirically what we see after all the intervention in Middle East, the forceful intervention doesn't really result in anything good. And it seems like common sense that the people need to be the driving force. So why is it different this time? Why is Iran, the case with Iran, different?
Thank you. Luis, I would take both questions and then let the panelists have like a final response.
If we go back to 1989 and the fall of Ceausescu in Romania, the security forces were firing on the protesters, and the army turned on the security forces and fought the security forces. Could this happen in Iran? That is my first question. The second question is, if there is a people's revolution, maybe led by the army, Iran is a very diverse country with a lot of minorities. Could we see another Syria turning into a civil war?
Okay, so
Alex, please.
Alex starting, yes?
Let me make life maybe straightforward. Let me take the second one if that's okay. Are you okay with that, Benny? If I take this last one and you take the first one, because that had that strong Palestine dimension to it that I think you're much better speaking to. But look, in terms of the, in terms of the analogy with Ceausescu's Romania 1989 and it's sort of a split within the ranks of the regime. That's exactly what I just published an article in Foreign Affairs with my good colleague Sanam Vakil from Chatham House in London. And we made the argument the regime's time is up. Iran is already changing. They know they have failed. And even if they don't accept it, the guy who's running the show is 86 years old. How long is he going to live? The idea isn't the regime has to change or is changing. It's how can you expedite the change and how can you shape the outcome? That's where it's key. So to prevent Syria, to prevent civil war, this is where you have to, this is the argument we made in this article. We say Reza Pahlavi is an inspirational leader. Nobody can deny that. The man has a following, and a lot of people don't like him, but he's the only one that has that inspirational role to play. But he cannot fly from Washington, D.C. to Tehran and take over. What Ayatollah Khomeini did in early 1979 when he flew from Paris to Tehran and take over, that's not the best scenario for Reza Pahlavi. This is a big country. By the way, Europe should not want to see Iran collapse. This is a big country. Just think about the refugee crisis and all sorts of crises that could happen. So it's in the interest of everyone to have an orderly transition to something different. Reza Pahlavi could play that role as the leader of the transition, and then they can decide what sort of a system they want, a republic, a monarchy, or something in between. But to do that, and that takes me to Romania in 1989, you need to create pockets of support inside the regime. The regular Iranian armed forces, the Artesh, are much bigger than the Revolutionary Guards. They're about 500,000, whereas the Revolutionary Guards probably around 170,000. But the Artesh leadership are all appointed by Khamenei. They're lower, the foot soldiers are not. And it's the foot soldiers you need to appeal to. But you need to show them a future that actually kind of inspires them. Because when you're talking about picking up guns and firing at other branches of the regime, you're asking these people to risk their lives. And I have to tell you, in Iran, today might be different, but historically, a lot of people are very suspicious about armed struggle because of what happened in 1979. In 1979, they got rid of the Shah, and they thought they could end up with democracy, and what they got was theocracy. They got these men with turbans on, and they haven't forgotten. So people are very cautious when it comes to shock therapy. If they can have gradualism, then they prefer that. But that means you've got to create conditions inside of Iran where folks from those without blood on their hands, they defect, including the armed forces, join the opposition in diaspora and the opposition in Iran. It's really important. The opposition in Iran is going to play the driving force role here. It's not going to be the opposition outside, because the opposition outside is not going to fly until it's safe. And that's no fun. Somebody has to risk their lives, and those somebodies are the ones in Iran. So my ranting answer to your question is, it's absolutely the sort of thing you want to see a split, a serious split in the ranks of the regime, then the regime will be in a much weaker position to stay the course. But let me stop there and hear Beni's thoughts.
Yeah. So about the last questions about the army and the things, I agree mostly with Alex. And one thing we have to remember, there is some difficulty with the Khamenei, that maybe it comes also from his childhood, that he suffered a lot and he slept under ground with nothing, and he is very strong from inside. When you suffer so much, I think he's very strong. You know, Alex, you talked about the constitutional revolution, but the king in that days was sick. The Khamenei is not sick. He is not weak. He's not in that place of being afraid. And what happened to Ceausescu, I remember. There was something about that leaders that fell. Gorbachev, again, he was kind of confused. Bringing changes from inside, it's not a good thing. And Khamenei is not in that place. This is the problem. This is the place that the Iranians need the foreign powers, in my opinion. Because Khamenei will not go alone by himself. It's not only even about IRGC. It's some engine from inside. And they don't let go. This is the problem with these kind of people. Someone has to come and push more and to unite the Iranians and other things. And I agree about Reza Pahlavi again, that he has not so much power inside, but maybe a coalition and some kind of symbol can give them, again, some hope and power. And I think the minorities won't go against each other, because I think it never happened even in Iran. About the first question of yours, yes, Iran is different. And this is the reason that we have so many conspiracies, that all of the world are against us, and they want only the oil, and they don't come when they need them. We have so many conspiracies, and some of them come true. I know that. But I think it's also the responsibility of the Iranian people to take control of their destiny and go like they began in 1909. This is the reason that I see that protests more important than even that this time. Maybe this time is like what happened in 1909, because in that days they also wanted to bring down the regime, the leader. They wanted to march to his house, and they couldn't. If Clinton could help them in that time, if George Bush did the right thing in his time, or other things, Obama in 2009, and other cases, and they don't come. So this is the reason that Iran is kind of a different. We see the big country and we are afraid, but things are not like that. Yes, Khamenei is a powerful man, is a strong man from himself, but one guy alone cannot do that. If we did a good homework about bringing more generals to defect and preparing other solutions for Iran in these protests, like Venezuela, so we could do it very fast. But we don't do it, and we think that only the Iranian people can do that, and they cannot. So what can I say? We have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. But for now, I hope you'll all join me in thanking Beni Sabti and Alex Vatanka, the great panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Alex. You did an amazing job.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alex number 2, and Beni. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more from the Middle East. Stay tuned. Check out coastandchaos.org, and we will have more coming for you on this field.
Lots of good. Thank you so much, man.
And hopefully we'll be having a quiet time ahead.